Welcome to Entrepreneur in Action. Today's guest is Rachel Hernandez, a fitness coach. So tell me, okay, what's different about you than other coaches?
I had a conversation with one of my clients this morning about this, and she said the difference is I focus on nutrition and wellness and habits and everything else outside of the gyms. Nutrition is so important. Like, it is so vital to hitting the goals you want in the gym, but it can't be like your side chick. Like, nutrition has to be the 90% that you focus on, and the gym just supplements that nutrition. But nutrition is a lot to explain and dive into, and you don't have your trainer with you for the other 23 hours of the day. It's hard for trainers because it's a lot of accountability teaching nutrition, because that's what's going to make the bulk of the change. In the gym, I can count your reps, I can show you what to do and everything, but that guidance for outside of the gym is very important, but it tends to be left behind. So I do focus on that a lot, which I think is a big deal for a lot of clients.
I think it's a huge deal because I could go to the gym every day, but if I'm eating wrong,
Hmm.
I won't see the results that I want to see.
Right. I tend to do the analogy of like fueling a car. It's like if you put the wrong gas into the car, it's not going to go. You have to fuel yourself correctly in order to maximize the results at the gym. And you cannot outtrain a bad diet. Like, it's not going to happen. It's so easy to eat in a surplus and then think, oh, I'm exercising it all off. But realistically, even really super hard workouts hit maximum 500 calories. And I mean, 500 calories is not a lot when you're eating it, especially if you're eating poor foods. I mean, I just assigned a client, he eats out a lot, and we looked at like Chick-fil-A's menu, and even getting like grilled chicken with like maybe a chicken noodle soup or something like that, it still adds up to close to 500 calories very easily. And that's one meal of a healthy option, right? So yeah, you cannot outtrain a bad diet. It doesn't work that way.
I've bought like cookies at Trader Joe's that each cookie was like 500 calories.
Yeah. I
They're
mean,
really big, thick, like they
like
usually
crumble
sell them in
cookies.
plastic bags.
Yeah. Yeah, it's exactly like crumble cookies. That's same thing where um and also too, they're very sneaky with the packaging, because they'll say like this is only 250 calories, but it says each serving is like half a cookie. And I don't know how many people that only eat half a cookie, but I think I'm one of the only ones where I'm like, most people are not just going to eat half the cookie. Most people do not have that self-discipline in reality to cut a cookie in half, be like, I'm just going to portion this one out. Because crumble cookies is portioned by fourths. So if you get a crumble cookie, the serving sizes are for a fourth of a cookie usually, and not even just a half.
That's so tricky.
Yeah, it's like trying to convince people, oh, it's not that bad. Efren and I went to he was at my bodybuilding show, and they sell
Your
cookies.
husband, your husband,
Yes, my husband, Efren. He's at the bodybuilding show. He's watching me, I'm on stage, so I'm like starving, right? And he's eating these cookies that they're selling. He assumed because we were at a bodybuilding show that they were healthy, but these cookies are geared towards the competitors because they're super high in calories. And so even when I showed him the nutrition facts online, he's like, oh, that's such a scam. It's even only for half a cookie. And these cookies are like 800 calories. Like, they're so high in calories. But no one looks at like the nutrition labels and the serving size, or even checks it before they start consuming it. Because he ate two of them. He ate 1,600 calories of cookies at my show, because no one looks at the calories. They're like,
so that's
it
like
must be
three
healthy.
major workouts
Three
in
major workouts. And all he did was sit in the stands all day. So yeah,
it's also
nutrition
half
is
a
important.
pound of weight, right?
Huh?
3,000 calories is a pound. So I guess
3,500.
15,
3,500. Mm-hmm.
3,500, but it's
Yeah.
basically half a pound
Yeah.
or
And he definitely didn't just eat two cookies for the day. That's a high calorie intake for a very low volume of food, which is a very key concept with nutrition.
so what got you into it? Like what made you fall in love with coaching and helping people in this way?
So even when I was 12 or 13, and in school, they make you write down, like, what career do you want to do one day? I did write personal training at that time. And then that kind of went away, and I didn't quite know what I wanted to do. I actually became a gymnastics coach when I was 15-ish, 15, 16. Coached gymnastics. And I coached gymnastics all the way up until about 2 to 3 years ago. So I did it for a very long span of time coaching. And I was coaching like 3-year-olds and 6-year-olds and like 12-year-olds, which is much harder to coach in an environment where everything is dangerous in a gymnastics gym. And then I started training adults. But prior to that, I randomly started attending fitness classes at 24 Hour Fitness, got a fitness certification, wanted to work at Orange Theory. I kind of fell into it. Wanted to work at Orange Theory. They were like, you need a personal training cert. So I got that. And then I was like, I'm just going to work as a personal trainer. So I started working at Gold's Gym, and I had some really good mentors there
How
that
old were you at
really,
the time?
uh, 23. My mentors there were amazing and taught me a lot. A few of them were bodybuilders, which I had no exposure to at that point. And then moving past that, COVID happened. I was working in the ER for 3.5 years during COVID, and that exposed me to a lot of healthcare issues and the need for preventative care, which when you see people coming in, the comorbidities that are associated with death with COVID were like obesity, hypertension, diabetes, things like that. So there is a very strong need for preventative care. And that's where when I went back to personal training, that was more what I was geared towards. I was training a lot of older people, overweight people, doing more weight loss style coaching, and then started doing my online business again, where I was coaching people primarily in weight loss for the online coaching as well, because that's a very nutrition heavy thing. And then I got my master's in public health because that's also part of my improving the quality of life of people. And I always tell people I feel like my calling in life is to improve the quality of life of people. And so this is all kind of, it all goes hand in hand together. So,
And the nutrition part, like you said, right? They have a lot of people have these problems that are, they seem so vast and so like hard to pin down, like diabetes or, the different various different health problems that are some people can think that they're incurable,
mhm.
right? But by changing what people eat, that's something that might be able to help those people. Is that something you're seeing in your work?
Yeah, I mean, people become more prone to diabetes if they're eating high intakes of sugar, they're overweight, not exercising, very sedentary. And that can be prevented and even more so like reversed when people lose weight, high blood pressure. My older brother ended up having high blood pressure when he had a sudden weight gain. And him and I spoke, and he lost the weight and the blood pressure went back to normal. Things like that can happen. People have chronic knee pain, chronic hip pains, chronic back pains due to being overweight as well. I've seen a lot of people where they have a large amount of body fat in their stomachs and it tilts their pelvis. So they get the back pain. And then they're like, I don't know why it's not going away. But, anatomically speaking, when that happens, you just have to fix this solution and this, comes back into place. So there's solutions for all of these things that people are struggling with. But I think there is a very, very large gap in knowledge in teaching and education and nutrition that would very much benefit people, because even some of the smartest people I know, even doctors that I've worked with, are like, we know nothing about nutrition. Like, we can give basic guidelines, but like there's not enough education of in-depth explaining of these concepts of like, making sure when you're consuming foods that there's a higher protein intake than the fat content, reading nutrition labels. I think that's a key. If people just read nutrition labels, I think they would lose weight a lot more easily because they're becoming so much more aware of what they're eating. And there is this idea around like food is enjoyable. It's this nice thing that you can just go and enjoy. But at the end of the day, it is your fuel. So if you are not caring about what you're putting in, you just care about the taste, that short-term satisfaction of food, then you're probably not fueling yourself appropriately. And so you're not going to have good energy. Your body's not going to operate well. You're going to hold on to body fat. You're going to have all these other snowball effects happen. So that's where, I'm always telling people, just read the nutrition labels. Just become aware of that. Become aware of what you're consuming. Because I want people to be able to tell me what they're consuming.
What should they look for on the nutrition labels?
Well, like we said, serving size is very important. Because sometimes you're like, this only has 6 grams of fat. But then it's like, there's 6 servings within this tiny package. Then it's like, okay, that's actually 36 grams of fat. And the reason I always tell people to look at the fats too is the calories per gram of fat is 9. So for every gram of fat, it's 9 calories. But for carbs and protein, every gram of a carb or every gram of a protein is only 4 calories. So you can get more bang for your buck by consuming more protein, consuming more carbs because you're getting less calories, especially if you're trying to lose weight. If you want to be in a calorie deficit, that's the way you can still consume a high volume of food without getting that extra calorie intake. Because, like we said, it's really hard to work off 500 calories, but that adds up really quickly, and just making little swaps here and there can, greatly cause a calorie deficit with little to no effort, you know?
So I go to Trader Joe's a lot to find, whatever kind of food I want. So I noticed that there's yogurt there that's like whole milk yogurt. And when I look, because I've spoken with you about this, and so I've trained myself to look at the macros, like what is the fat, how many grams of fat, how many grams of carbs, how many grams of protein.
Mm-hmm.
And specifically, I noticed that the yogurt that I had always been eating was 5 grams of protein, but like, I don't know, 10 grams of fat, which is a bad ratio,
Yeah, the
right?
reflux.
What,
Mm-hmm.
what's the, so, but then I found like a different, I want to ask like, what's a good ratio after this, but I found a different yogurt also in the same store, almost identical packaging, but it said the zero fat instead of the full fat. And
Mm-hmm.
the zero fat has 0 grams of fat, but it had twice or more of the protein. It had 11 or 12 grams of protein.
Yeah.
So to me, the taste is identical, but I know from learning from you about this that you have to like maximize like your enjoyment calories, right?
Mm-hmm.
And also, I'm trying to get a lot of protein and
Right.
minimize the fat so
Right.
that I can, eat the fat elsewhere. So
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I like that you said that eat the fat elsewhere because a lot of people are like, but don't you need fats? And I'm like, yes, you totally do. But you get them. A lot of foods have 2, 3 grams, 4 grams, whatever. You can get fats from maybe the meats you're eating, even like tofu has fat, things like that. You can get those grams of fat that you need to help digest, which I totally agree. You shouldn't be on a zero fat diet. But you're always going to get it. And a lot of people are like, well, I need healthy fats. I need fats. And I'm like, yes, but you're consuming so many bad fats that like you're not even saving room for the healthy fats. And the ratios too, actually one of my clients said this to me. He's 75, right? And he used to be severely overweight. And he always openly talks about this. He went and saw a nutritionist 30 plus years ago. And she said to him, I need you to always have more protein on your plate than anything else. Like, just always have a larger portion of that than anything else. She said, if you do not lose weight in 1 month, come back to me, you can fire me. And he stuck with that same nutritionist for 30 years. Okay. He didn't even count things. He just started recognizing that he was more satiated. He was better fueled by having the more protein and the less fattening, less high carb, less high sugar foods. And that made all the difference for him. He lost like 150 pounds doing it that way. And just like you're saying, you're like, I'm getting the same taste. I'm getting more protein. And it's funny too that you say this because people will be like, oh, I don't want to change my foods and stuff, but they'll come to me, they'll be like, you know what? I'm eating my peanut butter for my protein. That's like a common thing people tell me is they're like, oh, I had toast with peanut butter because I want to get protein in. Have you looked at the ratio of fats versus protein? It's very similar to the yogurt you're describing. And you're like, oh, this is 10 grams of fat to 5 grams of protein. That doesn't make sense. Why would I eat that? But, peanut butter is really tasty. And people are like, well, it's 15 grams of fat to 7 grams of protein. That's not a high protein food. And that's where people need to be aware of the protein. If it is a high protein food, it has to have more protein than everything else in it. That isn't just because there's protein in it doesn't make it like a protein food. And some places even market it. I think there's actually a scale that you have to have a certain amount of protein in for it to be called a protein food. I don't know the exact number, but check that because you can't be consuming more fats in it than you are the protein, especially for your average person who's probably not consuming the right amount of protein, probably low on protein. And especially if they're trying to lose weight, if they're trying to be in the gym, they're trying to build muscle mass, you have to intake the adequate amount of protein. Your body needs that to build the muscle. Your body's not going to take your 100 grams of fat and you're not going to turn into a sculpture, like a beautiful chiseled sculpture. It's not going to work.
So you need more protein than fat. So the wrong ratio is like 2 grams of fat for every gram of protein. So if the yogurt has 10 grams of fat and 5 grams of protein. That's the wrong ratio. And a good ratio is like 10 grams of protein to like how many grams of fat are you looking for ideally?
I always try, for me personally, that I think has worked to keep my fats in check has been at least like a 2 to 1, where like the protein, it would be, let's say 10, and then the fats at least 5 or below.
And then that makes sense kind of because it's equal calories, right? So like 5 grams of fat, that's the same calories from the fat that you're getting from 10 grams of protein.
Yeah, exactly. That's like a good way because fats are just a little bit more than double the calories of carbs and protein. But yeah, you shouldn't, especially again, especially if you're trying to lose weight. Now, there are people who, you know, bodybuilders, for example, are predominantly muscle, right? Their bodies are working at a much better metabolic rate than your average person because their ratio of body fat to their muscle mass is so significantly different. And my coach kind of talked to me about this a little bit too, is he's like, bodybuilders operate differently, but people see them in the gym and they think, well, he gets to eat that much. Why don't I get to eat that much? But people don't understand that that high level of muscle tissue is burning so many calories. We call it active muscle tissue. It's active tissue on your body. Body fat just sitting there is not doing anything for you. So when you do see people who are super muscular, but they're just chowing down, it's because their body is burning through it. They are a well-oiled machine there. They're burning. Your average person who's kind of sedentary, low muscle mass, they don't get that privilege. And I do kind of tell people that. I'm like, you kind of have to build muscle mass. You have to go through this point where you're eating a lot of low fat foods, you're eating high protein, you're being very aware of it because you're not a well-oiled machine. Your body actually has no clue what the heck's happening because there's no consistency in your nutrition. But those people that do really stay on a regimen, they do eat a lot of calories. When you have more muscle mass, your metabolic rates are increased more than the average person.
So the muscle eats more calories than if you just were made of, if you had more fat in your body, the fat's not going to eat as many calories when you're digesting food.
Yeah.
And then
Like,
it's going to create more fat.
yeah, because if you're overeating and then your body's not burning through it, it's just going to store it. I mean, you know me pretty well, and you know I just finished a bodybuilding show and we're increasing my calories slowly, but my calorie maintenance is higher than someone else who's my height, my weight, but more body fat because I can burn through those calories. They can't. They don't have the active tissue that it takes to burn through the equivalent amount of calories. So their body is going to store it. My body is going to burn it. So you can have the same height and weight, but the body composition is what matters.
So we always talk about the 4 F's in this podcast, right? So it's finance, fitness, family, and fun.
Mhm.
So you've made your own business. You're very entrepreneurial. And so tell me what does that look like for you? Like what are your revenue streams? Like how did you build your business?
Well, you know, I just transitioned to a private gym in the past 2 months and I have an online business. And I feel like I kind of market myself when you're a trainer. People like to work out with trainers who look like they work out, which helps. And so, yeah, I have my online clientele, and that mostly is weight loss clients. And I've gotten those all through pretty much referrals or seeing me on Instagram. Lots of referrals, though. Lots of people actually from my hometown, from Indiana, that have seen me or seen people I've trained who have seen them lose this weight and who are like, okay, I want guidance. But I'm honestly, in my hometown, I think there's probably 2 personal trainers in my hometown. So they don't have access to it, too. So something that I am targeting with my online clients is giving access to nutrition and training and just habit changing and general wellness through a portal that they can now have access to. It's just providing access to people who don't have access to that. And then I have my in-person business, which again has gone through referrals, but also, you know, I've worked at commercial gyms. I've built up clientele and my awesome clients who have followed me, you know, it's been great. And it hasn't been too hard of a struggle as of right now. But I think part of that is I do know I'm good at my job because I care about it and I learn and I'm always educating myself and my clients. And that helps a lot with, you know, client retention and continuing that stream of revenue. And yeah, I mean, a lot of it is just being really good at what you do. And then doing that, people refer people. And that's just been so far how I've kept going and making money and being able to finance my own bodybuilding which is kind of cool that, through my clients seeking to make themselves better and healthier, I'm able to then pursue like my passion as well.
So what I'm hearing is like you're kind of like a billboard for your own business, right? Because you work out and that's visible. Like when someone
Mhm.
sees you in person, they can see, oh, she's ripped. She's got a
Thank you.
very fully developed back, big
I know.
shoulders,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
skinny, right? Like you're not
I'm lean.
like a lot, you don't have extra weight, which is that shows that not only can you achieve it for yourself, but then when they see your clients
Mhm.
who are also achieving those results, then they not only can she do it for herself, but she can also get these results for other people. And
Mhm.
that's sort of like the big 1-2 punch where they're like, this could be right for me. And so they find you through your Instagram and they meet you in person. And then also, like you said, you come from, a Midwestern state. Like it's not where you live now, but you came from the Midwest and you even have people in your hometown that are like, hey, I see you on Instagram, or I see a friend. And so you're developing your business by walking the walk, and then by having people spread the word through like organic means, like people to people spreading the word.
Yeah, and too, my clients are also their own walking billboards for me. I've had clients who, I mean, have just lost significant amounts of weight. I have a client right now who's down probably 50 to 60 pounds from this year alone. And people notice, like, that's not something that's unnoticeable. I have clients who've dropped 20, 30 pounds, and it's like, oh, how'd you do it? And they're like, oh, I have this trainer, you know? Immediately, like, that's the advertising. And they're just like real life examples. They're not like these transformation photos they see online. They can actually talk to that person, be like, well, what did that entail? I have a client who we dropped her first 10 pounds just by increasing her water intake. And she's like, you know what? I just needed to educate on hydration, like simple concepts. And she, these clients are able to be like, you know what? I'm not starving. I'm learning about what I'm feeling myself with. I'm learning to hydrate. I'm learning to work out, to exercise, to get my body moving. And they're learning all these key components. And so then they can share with people who are interested and be like, no, actually, like I'm learning a sustainable weight loss, which is very key because a lot of people go through these crazy, extreme diets, but then they just rebound, right? So when they talk to my clients and they're like, no, this is sustainable. Like I've been with her for 2 years and I'm still losing weight, no plateauing. Then it just, they advocate for me. And that's how I get, new clients. That's the,
It's amazing. Yeah, it's wonderful. It's a wonderful way to create a business because it's got wonderful incentives. That's one thing I love about fitness coaching. Like you're there helping people, and if people, like if someone gets injured, they can't come to the gym, and then so like there's an incentive for you to keep them healthy,
mm-hmm,
keep them injury free. And I
mm-hmm,
want to go back to something that you mentioned earlier, where you spent time working in the ER kind of before you went back to fitness, like, and coaching people in the gym. And then you simultaneously you got your degree from USC in world health. And then I know you had some like transformative experiences along the way, like even through your USC experience, like you were able to travel to Africa
mm-hmm,
for a week.
mm-hmm.
So like what hit you the hardest in that experience? You went to Africa, like what
Yeah.
hit you?
I think it's just like when we went to Africa, I think it just reflected a little bit that the healthcare systems, even though healthcare systems are not great, right? But there's so, whether you're in Ghana or whether you're in America, there's such a lack of just basic education on things. Like, for example, a lot of people, they had like cataracts issues and things like that because they weren't protecting themselves from the sun. They're out, and about, and a lot of them don't know about anything about nutrition. They just use the resources they have available, or, in Africa, malaria is like a key thing, right? And so they don't always know all the signs and symptoms of their child having malaria, and here we struggle with, a lot of chronic illnesses like obesity, diabetes, hypertension, and things like that. But a lot of people just don't have like a good level of education. And throughout my public health degree as well, the thing that I like to focus on was educating. When I did my internship, I did an internship with an organization here in California that works with domestic violence and educating the Indian community that's here. And I did a full, I think, 10 to 12 week course with them on nutrition. So every week we hopped on a Zoom call with whoever wanted to come and just taught about nutrition. And I actually have a few online clients who train with me through those calls because they're like, I need better information because people dive so much into the food that's with their cultures, but then they also are susceptible then to, some of these chronic diseases that are common with their cultures because of the foods they're consuming. So for me, it's a lot about, okay, I have gotten better at aligning culture and nutrition and educating in both of those realms. And I think for me, it's just like education is key. Like through everything I've been doing, through traveling, through all of the variations of clients, whether it's my elderly clients, my young clients, whatever, it's a lot of just people need educated. And sure, the gym is awesome. And I love that aspect of my training, but nutrition, wellness, habits, things like that, that's been like my key focus.
How do you get them to hear it? Right? So you're talking to people who, as you said, they come from a culture where their food might be high fat.
Right.
There might be like butter, high butter content or different other fats and low protein. And
Hmm.
that's their whole culture of food. And that's all they've ever known their whole life. How would you speak to someone who knows nothing different than that? And how would you be able to help them take a chance to try to have a high protein, healthier diet?
Yeah. I mean, I've had tons of clients like that where it's been a cultural thing. And I mean, even so, my husband is, his family's all from Mexico and their foods are not the healthiest either. And those conversations, though, typically I have them tell me what they eat, I have them write stuff down, and then I show them, hey, I'm not asking you to completely cut this out. I'm meeting you where you're at, but let's do a quarter serving of this versus like a full serving, where it's a compromise. And eventually I've had some clients where they were like, "But we cook this all the time with ghee, right?" And then I was like, "Can you just cut it in half?" And they cut it in half and then they'd start to be like, "Oh, okay, this isn't that bad with just half." But then they'd start to cut it out completely and it was almost their own realization of being like, "You know what? You're right. I didn't actually it tastes the same." Like a lot of times it doesn't taste significantly different. Even for Thanksgiving, right? I hosted Thanksgiving at my house for my in laws, and pretty much all the foods I made were either low fat ingredients, no fat ingredients, high protein things, and no one noticed. Most time you don't, but it's just like that education. So in other cultures where maybe they have something that they're using a lot of dairy, like high heavy whipping cream, things like that, we do change them out for I made the Hoosier Indiana sugar cream pie for Thanksgiving using fat-free half and half and no one noticed, You can switch things out and that's where a lot of people are willing to meet me where I need them to for nutrition, where I'm still accommodating what they would typically eat culturally. Portion control is huge in that. I mean, people can still eat the things that they really enjoy, but there has to be a level of portion control, which is something that is not taught anywhere because everywhere you go, especially in America, portions are massive. But I give my clients tips and tricks for that, and they're willing to adhere to that. And adherence to the plan is key. So, a good tip for everyone is, when you go to a restaurant, when you get your food, ask for a to go box. Just portion it, put it into the to go box and put it aside because typically people only eat what's on their plate. They're not going to go reach into the to go box. And I've had a client who started doing this and saw so much progress because her family likes to eat out. But having that portion control was significant. And also too, you get like 3 meals out of it then. Financial savings. So that works too. Portion control, little modifications here and there, and people will adjust. They learn. Your taste buds change a little bit. You start to adhere to it better and they see changes. And people are really motivated when they see their body start to change. That can trump wanting butter on your food, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah. What is it? A moment on the lips, a lifetime on the hips.
People say that. Yeah.
So I've never been to Africa. Take me through what it was like for you when you got on the plane here in California and you stepped off the plane in Africa. What was that like?
Hot, first of all. But at first, it didn't feel super different until we got to where we were staying. Then we kind of noticed like the conditions of where we were at. It was super humid. Bugs, that's why they say bring tons of bug spray to Africa. We, always had that on. But
And this is in
the
Ghana? You were in Ghana.
Ghana. Yeah. And we went to a very small town in Ghana. We were not like in the capital or anything. But when we got there, the difference is I mean, I guess within the health, we set up clinics throughout. We did clinic 5 days of the five days that we were there. We set up these clinics for the whole day, like morning to like right before the sun went down. We did these clinics for people, and I think that a big difference is that they were so receptive to what we were saying, what we were teaching. We actually had a portion of the clinic where we would go and educate people. I was in charge of the nutrition portion of that one day, and people were so receptive and grateful that we were there to educate them. We were there to provide medicine. We going there paid for that. Like, this organization will raise money to then pay for those medications to be there. And they were so grateful and so willing to listen to us with a very open mind about things. They weren't super defensive about things. And I think that's different than sometimes when we educate people here, because there's so many options. So people are willing to, I always tell people that I'll say to someone, hey, how about you switch this out for this? And they're like, well, isn't that bad for you? And I'm like, okay, but every other thing you're eating for the day is also bad for you. But like, this is a better option than what you were consuming before. When we were there and saying, hey, we need you to do this, or you should do this, or you should, eat more vegetables, eat this, whatever. They weren't like, oh, but what about this? They were just like, we will take that and we will do with it what we can, instead of questioning the person educating them, which I think it's okay to still question that, get your own information and stuff, but they don't get defensive about it. They don't get defensive about their own habits because they're learning from people who have more experience in these things. And so as a trainer, here I do have a lot of people who will get defensive about certain things, and which it's defensive about things that they really, really enjoy and they just don't want me to make them give it up. So yeah, it's just different. Like, the reception to the information I'm providing was different. There was a lot more feeling grateful and just appreciative that we were there to educate. And all of us kind of said this on the trip. There's like no level of entitlement there. People sat there from 8 a.m. until 5 p.m. waiting to be seen. And no one complained at all. No one said anything. They were just thankful that we were there. And I think that was like the biggest difference, which was I asked the doctor, I was like, is this normal that people here will sit here for hours and hours and hours just to get Tylenol from you? And he said, yes, like, this is normal. Like, there isn't that level of entitlement.
So the hospital was like a building and there were people like.
No, it was outside. It wasn't a hospital. We like set up clinics, like tents.
So you set up tents.
There would be like a small building that maybe like they would have for if women had to give birth or something, but it was a very small building, but everything else was pretty much tents and chairs sitting outside in the heat, like 100+ degrees. Yeah. So there was no food. People would sit there for 9 hours with just no food. Like, they would just be waiting. And a lot of it was like they needed Tylenol, or, maybe their kid had signs of malaria, like things like that. Like, people just sit there all day with no complaints. No. Yeah.
How did they know that their kid like had some symptoms? Like, what were the symptoms that they were seeing that they brought their kid there?
Well, typical to how we have here, like if they're fatigued, lethargic, eyes were yellowing, things like that. And the malaria test is super, super easy. So it's quick to know and quick to get the medication and everything. Typical people know when their kids are sick, right? And so that's why they would bring them there. Or if they themselves felt sick or they couldn't see very well, like things had changed. And some people, just because we were there, they came, even if they didn't have any problems. It's just they don't have access to medical care that often. And so they take advantage to come. And sometimes there's people who thought there was nothing wrong with them. And the doctor's like, wait, let's check this real fast. Because they aren't educated in certain signs and symptoms of other things. So some people came with no complaints, but ended up leaving with, a diagnosis of something they didn't know. Some people think they had a certain thing and then they left with the reassurance that they don't. And when the doctor says, hey, you're good, they just say, okay, like, thank you. And they walk out, you know?
So were these life and death cases?
No, I wouldn't say that. I think there was one or two people who definitely needed to like go to the hospital. We had a kid who had, you know, a very large mass on him that needed to go to the hospital, but it was pretty far. I think we actually did provide them transportation though, because the hospitals are far from these small towns. They're pretty spread out. So we had a few of those, but like a lot of people, like, you know, simple Tylenol, simple, like the malaria medication we took, skin treatment, eye drops, things like that, allergy medication. That's what we were typically, you know, handing out. And, but you know how much relief just taking a Tylenol can give you, you know, that was something we were able to provide for them, which they were, you know, grateful for.
So you were able to make an impact, in just a week, right? While you were there, and you were seeing a different culture and a different way of interacting with doctors. Like you said, there's more of there's more confusion here because there's so many messages
Mm-hmm.
people get, not only from commercials, like you should ask your doctor about this drug and then look at all the side effects it has, right? Or, online information where people are doing their own research, like going to WebMD or other websites,
Yeah. We loved that at the ER.
right? Because they
People
would
would
tell
come in there like, says that I have cancer. And we're like, WebMD did? Okay.
so suddenly their knowledge trumps yours
Yeah.
because even though you've been to school,
It
they
doesn't
have
matter.
WebMD.
Yeah. Yeah. What do we know? Yes, exactly.
And so you're seeing a totally different side of things in Africa, and you know you can make a difference. So I remember having the conversation at some point where we talked and I heard from you. You were like, this when you were there, like you felt like that you could have stayed if
Yeah.
certain situations had changed. What did that look like, making that decision? Like feeling like you could have stayed there somehow and made a difference. How did you get to a decision making process that you had to ultimately not stay there and come back to LA and train people the way you're training them now?
Yeah. Good memory, by the way, remembering that I said that. Yeah. Like I said, my passion in life is improving the quality of life of other people. And because just within, you know, those clinics that we did, I mean, we probably saw, I mean, like 500 some people. And I there's great need. There's great work to still be done over there. And there's great work to still be done here though. And the reason I feel like I could have stayed is because other than like my husband and I being married here, like I do not grow overly attached to like a space. And like if I needed to move, I could. I moved from the Midwest where I grew up my whole life to California. I've moved around Southern California a little bit and like I'm not overly attached to a place. And I am one of those people that if they said we need you to live in Ghana for the next year, I'd be like, okay, like we can make that work. You know, there's just so much work and so much need there that, you know, I could have done. I don't need like luxury things to be happy. And over there, you don't get them. We were staying in a nice, decently nice place, and it was still, you know, similar to like a Motel 6 here, right? Passion for helping people, my heart for helping people is there. And like, if they needed me to, I could have. Like, the only thing would be, you know, my husband being here. But then again, something that I've learned throughout a long time is there's need wherever you go. And right now, like, with me helping people lose weight and feel better and, you know, kind of doing the preventative medicine side, like I'm addressing that need here too. So if the opportunity arose that I could go back to Ghana and help them where that need is, I would love to. But I also do feel like I'm doing great work here too. I have clients who tell me, like, even tell other clients while I'm standing there, like, she's changing my life, right? Which is awesome. I just care about the quality of life that my clients have because I do care about my clients. And I have this discussion with Ephraim, my husband, all the time. Is he's like, you love your job. I'm like, because I'm doing what I love and helping people in that process. And I don't mind going to train. I teach 7 a.m. classes and I don't mind going to teach them because I know I'm helping people feel better. And I know how I feel feeling better. I know how I feel when I'm well fueled. Like I can relate to that. And I am someone who practices what she preaches. I feel myself well and I feel good and I know how that feels and I know how good it feels to feel good in your own body. And I know there's people who don't feel that way and I can help them feel that way. And whether that's they're sick, like in Ghana, maybe people are sick and they need help and I can help them feel better in their body, or whether it's, that problem that needs addressed in America, which is a lot of overweight people and that needs addressed too. And I can help them feel better. So wherever I'm at, I'm contributing what I am capable in the capacity I'm able to. So that's why I said I could stay in Ghana. I could do that. I could live that life, or I could be here and do what I'm doing now.
I think making that decision for so many people, right? And we all face this from time to time when we have like a life changing decision to make. And I think a lot of people will experience like paralysis or like agony, like, how do I do this but this, right? You have a goal and a calling to help people, right? And you're like, oh, I could help people in
Mm-hmm.
God and I could help them in this way. We would see 500 people a day. We would, like help them by giving them education, but it's a totally different culture. I could also help people at home, right? I can help them improve their metabolism so they don't have, you know, the diseases that a lot of people have. You know, so and improving their health in all the ways that you help them. So finding that way to make a decision like that, I think some people just it would be agony for them. What is it that's special about you? Like, how do you approach this type of decision making when you have these life changing decisions? Because we've all faced them, but when I see how you face your life changing decisions, I think you you are able to do it without some of the emotion that some people might go through. All of that, like that pressure that feels like just pure torture, and they just freeze. Like how do you approach decision making so you don't freeze?
I think a lot of with decision making comes with trusting yourself. And I think if you don't know yourself very well, if you haven't taken the time to get to know yourself, you're not going to trust your own decision making. And I do tell people this is as you know, I was not married to the idea of being married. And I think it's because I took so much time to get to know myself and I'm so comfortable with myself that when I need to make a decision that could affect me or other people, I do trust myself to rationalize through those decisions and make the best call so I don't feel that high level of pressure where I make decisions for my clients day in and day out based on what foods I want them to eat, the exercises I want them to do, because I trust my knowledge in doing that. And even in my personal decision making, a lot of it comes from, I think a term that we learned a lot in college was like seeking good counsel. And that, like, if maybe I wasn't sure because maybe I felt like I was lacking knowledge to make that decision, I feel like I do surround myself with good people to discuss those decisions with. And so if maybe am like, I don't know what decision to make, let me discuss this with people I trust, get their opinions, rationalize through their opinions, and then make my decision. I tend to stay pretty clear minded. And like you said, like, I'm not a crazy emotional person. Like, I don't have really heightened emotions. I don't like go from one end of the spectrum to the other. I tend to stay in this middle level. And I've always been that way. I think I'm similar to my mom in that. My mom's like that too, where we stay pretty level headed and are able to take that time to rationalize through. I mean, I think that's also why Ephraim, my husband, and I get along so well, is because he is that way. And you know that him and I communicate very well. We're able to rationalize through problems that we have very easily and clearly. And we just communicate. And I'm like, hey, I feel this way because this happened. And then he doesn't get defensive in that. And he just says, I hear what you said. I meant it this way. How can we approach this in the future? And even with my decisions, I'm like, okay, I feel this way about decision. Why do I feel this way about decision? Why do I feel clear that this is the right decision? I can typically rationalize through almost like a little like flow chart. And so that's how I do it. But I think the way I was raised, parenting wise and everything, they kind of let me be like a little adult, like where kids kind of make their own decisions. And I think that's why my parents trusted when I moved out to California. I chose that. They did not love that idea, right? But I remember stepping onto Azusa Pacific's campus and being like, this is my school and I'm going to be here. Like every time I move into something, I feel very confident in that decision. And so far, my decisions have played out well.
So what I'm hearing is like, so you had this sense of support from your parents that for them to allow you to develop your own trust in yourself for making your own decisions. Like what were some of those early decisions that they allowed you to feel that trust for yourself in making those decisions?
I think my first major decision that I remember clearly them being like, this is your choice, was I was a competitive gymnast from age 3 to 15. But I became a diver, a springboard diver, which I ended up doing through college at age 13. And I remember approaching my parents around age 14 and saying to them, hey, I like diving better. I know we've invested so much money into gymnastics. And I was like, but I think I'm done with this. Like, I don't want to do it anymore. I don't like it anymore. And they said, you know what? That's your decision. If you don't want to be a gymnast anymore, we will support that. I had to finish out the season because we're like mid competition season, but they said that's your choice. If you would like to go into diving and pursue, club diving, things like that, that's your decision. We trust that, but make sure you understand that once you make the decision, we're not going to bounce back and forth. And my parents did make that clear. When I made a decision for myself, I had to be firm in that decision because they were not going to let me bounce back. And maybe that's why I feel so confident as an adult, because all those choices I made when I was younger, they were like, we're not teeter-tottering. There were 4 kids in my family, and my mom was like, I am not dealing with you changing your mind back and forth. So if your mind is made up, you need to be that way. And ever since then, I've always been that way. Like when I make a decision, my brain is dialed in. Even Ephraim says that. He's like, you know what? He's like, I love that you're like that. And he was like, and you're always that way. Like with my bodybuilding, when I decided to bodybuild, that was it. We were dialed in. And I've always been that way. But he says, to the extreme of like, I'm worried if you choose something that you'll be too dialed in and I can't pull you out of that decision because like, what if it turns out that we don't want you in that decision anymore? Because I put blinders on. I put these like horse blinders, when I have something that I have chosen or agreed to, then that's what I dive into. No pun intended with the diving. But yeah, and you know what? I did diving through college. It paid for school. So that decision, that major life decision that my parents were like, hey, this is yours, I feel like I chose correctly. So that was a big trust in myself that I feel like, okay, I know myself well enough to know what I want to do. And you know what? To this day, I do not regret quitting gymnastics and switching to diving. And so that's very reaffirming for me.
It's very interesting to me that they supported you to make a decision, but they also gave you those guardrails. Like, we don't want you to just keep switching back and forth. And also, when you make this decision, it doesn't mean that you're immediately able to bounce from one to the other. You have to still fulfill what you had agreed to previously. You have to finish the season. You have to finish the year, whatever we already agreed to. You can do them both at the same time if you can manage it, but you can't just clip it off and waste that investment that we paid for till the end of the year, and then you can move forward in the other thing. Don't keep switching back and forth because you're going to drive
Yeah.
us crazy.
Yeah. You know what's funny though is we had a similar kind of situation as an adult now. So I'm from Indiana. It's very conservative over there, right? Ephraim and I wanted to move in together before we got married because my lease was up. He had just bought the house, and we called my parents and we said we wanted to move in together. And my parents, and I told him, I said, they're not going to love this. And we said to them though, we said, look, we're going to move in together, but we want you to understand that our intention is to be married. And if there is at any point in the next year and a half where we feel like we are not, we will separate. Like we were like, we understand that with this decision, we are committing that we're going to eventually get married. And it felt similar to the gymnastics situation. Like you can't just say, we're going to get married and 6 years down the road, you're still just living together. That doesn't fly a lot with my Midwest parents. And you know what? Here we are. We held true to that. Going into moving in together, I'd never moved in with a partner before, but I knew that was the right decision. And even when I spoke with my parents about it, it wasn't like this scary thing of like, oh, what if I change my mind? Like, they're going to, say, oh, we told you so, you shouldn't have, whatever. we had discussed and rationalized and talked about that decision so much that like it felt like the gymnastics thing. Like when I quit gymnastics, I was for sure like that was the end and I was moving into a new portion of my life. And that's the same thing that kind of happened when we moved in together. And I think my parents too, because they've always trusted my decisions and I've been so firm in those and those decisions have come out how I expected them to. I think that's why when we said that, they were like, okay, we hear you. Do it.
I think it's really fascinating because like the root of that word decision, it's like scissors, right? You cut one possibility away. When you decide one thing, the other thing goes away.
Mm-hmm.
So you decided to move in together because you're going to get married. And so there's only one reason to be moved in together, which is because we want to test, we want to, we have either we want to test it out, and make sure that we're not going to, have negative outcomes from living together. We want to make sure that we can, uh, know what to expect once we actually do get married.
Yeah.
And
Like Love
so,
is Blind.
yes, like Love is Blind, but those shows are really good examples of why it doesn't work. So, what what is it about the way you do decisioning that makes it work? And I think Love is Blind could be a good example, right? Those people decide to get married,
Mm-hmm.
but it doesn't work.
Doesn't work.
What would you tell those Love is Blind people or people who, make a decision maybe without enough information or and they want to go back? Like, how could your framework of decision making, because you make decisions and you keep them and it works out. So the difference between that and the typical person on that TV show Love is Blind, they make a decision to get married to a stranger and then they marry a stranger and then it never works. Chances are it's not going to work, right? And we just watch the train wreck, and that's what the show is.
Yeah.
But
It's
but I
great
want to
TV.
know what's the difference with you because you make these decisions and it takes you to all these places, right? You've been to Africa. You're a competitive bodybuilder. You do fitness coaching. You've worked in the ER, right? So you're having a lot of really cool adventures. And
Mm-hmm.
I want to find out like what's transferable about this. What can other people learn from you in your decision making that can help them?
Well, again, trusting yourself, trusting like that you know yourself well enough to make those decisions. But something that I always tell people that also does help a lot is I tell myself I'm helping my future self. So when I make a decision now, how is that going to affect my future self? Am I going to be happy that I made the decision or am I not going to be? So, for example, like, I do photography. And in October, I kind of said to Ephraim, I was like, you know what? I think I'm going to take a step back from photography. I was doing a ton of shoots. I was doing shoots like every weekend. And I was in prep for my bodybuilding show. I was exhausted. And I was like, you know what? I'm doing this new endeavor with this new gym and photography takes up a lot of time. I have to edit, whatever. I said, I'm just gonna, if I have one shoot here and there, great, but I'm not gonna be advertising. I'm not gonna be replying to all these Yelp requests and everything because I knew going into November and December that if I started accepting shoots for these months, I was going to be upset with my previous self because I was going to be like, that's going to overwhelm me because I know where my passion is sitting right now, and that's in bodybuilding. And I want to have the available time and space and energy to do that. And I knew back then when I was making that decision that I was like, this is going to help my future self. Like, I'm going to be happy that I made this decision. And even though, yes, it causes me to take a little bit of a like less money. I mean, less financial support, but it's giving me that time that I need to pursue the things that I care about. I now in November, no, now in December, I appreciate that I made that decision like a lot because I knew coming into November, December, I was going to be even more invested because it was after my show. I knew I wanted to do more bodybuilding. I saw my coach 2 or 3 times last week alone, and he's an hour away. So I'm able to invest that time and not stress, well, I have to get to this photo shoot and I have to do this because I decided back then I was going to prioritize bodybuilding. And then by doing that, I have more time. I'm prioritizing, my friends. I'm prioritizing my relationship. I'm prioritizing my clients. I'm spending more time working with them. I'm spending more time on Zoom calls with them, going through nutrition stuff. I just onboarded a new client. I have more space and capacity to do that because I took a step back from the photography. But that helping your future self is a good motto to go by because I mean, I do it with every day. Like, I went to the grocery store and I was like, I'm going to buy 5-gallon jugs right now. Even though I would usually buy like 2 or 3, I was like, because you know what? This is going to supply my whole week of gallons that I have to drink. And I was like, even though I hate carrying all the gallons around, it's really annoying. It fills up my trunk. I'm like, I'm helping my future self in this moment so that I do not have to worry about buying my gallons of water. Like simple things like that. But in most of my decisions, I always say, like, I'm helping my future self. And I think that helps because typically we treat others better than we treat ourselves. Sometimes we're kinder to other people in those decisions. A lot of people who struggle with decisions are worried about what's going to affect other people and not necessarily like, how is it going to be for the greater good of me and the people? So you kind of have to put your own self into that mix of like, if someone else was making that decision for me, what would I want them to do? So that's where my future self becomes like a second person next to me.
Yeah, you're helping someone else, and that someone else is your future self. And then your future self, as you said, they can tell you your past self, I appreciated that.
Yeah, I do tell myself that.
What big decision are you currently like putting through your decision making framework right now?
Yeah, well, we're going through a few decisions. I mean, with the bodybuilding off season, there's a lot of decisions to make with off season. How long is it going to be? How are we going to take it on? What's it going to look like? And for me, that's like my biggest passion right now is bodybuilding. So making some decisions through that. Ephraim and I are making those together, getting all of our information we need for that. We are full force going into off season. What does the time commitment look like? How often do I need to be driving over to see my coach? Really everything involved in my off season is my main focus. But to be honest, like right now, I feel like I'm in like a good place where like with work, I feel really good about my schedule and how many clients I've taken on and the classes I'm teaching and then my online clients, I feel great about that. So I don't feel like I have super crazy harsh decisions right now, mostly just with like my bodybuilding. Ephraim and I were just discussing too about whether I was going to re-up and do a podcast on my own and start to do that in the new year, which, I have to decide if I have the capacity to do that. Right? That's another big decision making thing, right? And I'm like, am I going to regret putting myself in the position to record a podcast every week? Or am I going to enjoy that? Like, is that going to be something that's good for me or not good for me? And so we're still kind of making that decision. And I'm making that with him too, because that affects us. I mean, adding something else to my plate, am I going to have the capacity to do that? So I'm making that decision and consulting him on that, seeing how he thinks he knows my schedule. So kind of two decisions on expanding my business. What does that look like? And, I've already, discussed that I want to, with him at least, that I want to expand my social media. I want to expand my social media presence in order to build a good platform because that could be a career choice at some point. Like having that platform could, mean a multitude of different things. Some bodybuilders go into posing coaching, some go into prep coaching, some go into having a gym, whatever that looks like. Those are decisions we're making, but those are going to be a long-term decision, not necessarily like a super short-term decision right now.
And then I know you help your clients a lot with, like in those moment decisions, like
Mm-hmm.
their nutrition day to day. Should I eat, this high fat content food or something similar that might taste just as good and have low fat and high protein? And so you help them with that. But I know that you also, you talk to your clients about deep stuff too. So it's not that that's not deeply important, but other deep stuff outside of that. So like what are some examples, like how have you helped clients, promote better decision making and get better outcomes?
Yeah. Yeah. So some people say personal trainers are also therapists because people do talk to us about a lot of stuff. And it's funny too, because even before Ephraim and I ever started dating, he was my client. And now looking back, I'm like, do you realize how much stuff you used to tell me? Like things that I'm like, I look back and I'm like, I can't believe you were expressing this to me. Like he was like, I'm dating this girl and I want to be a dad, but like she goes to raves every weekend. And I'm like, maybe that's not the lady you like to be the mom of your kids, but I'm a trainer. I'm sitting there. I'm like, that's a big decision whether you're going to break up with this girl or not. And so typically when clients ask me my opinion on things, I come to them with my own personal experience of if I were in that situation from previous things that have happened, like what would I do? So like one of my clients was like, I'm not sure if I want to go to my family's get together for Thanksgiving. She said, there's been so much drama and like I kind of just need a break. Like work's been crazy, kids have been crazy. I just think we need time alone, but like there's going to be so much drama if we don't show up, but there's going to be drama if we do show up. And I kind of told her, I was like, you know what? I think it's okay where there's some scenarios where you choose yourself. Because I've been in scenarios where I've had to choose my feelings, which is okay. Because I know from coaching moms, especially, they always care about everyone else's feelings. And then they reach, a certain point where they've been caring about everyone else's feelings so much that they're just sitting there and they're hurt and they just haven't prioritized themselves. And I told her, I said, if I were you, if you feel like that is going to take away from you and not, fuel you and give you good energy and make you feel good, then don't go. You said there's going to be drama either way. But if you can stay home and spend really good quality time with your family, that's going to be good quality time for you guys, then do that. Like choose yourself in that situation, choose your family in that situation. I do give advice in the capacity that I can from experiences that I have had. And I am younger than a lot of my clients. I do feel like from moving from across the country, I don't have family out here. And from training so many people and hearing their experiences, sometimes I pull from other people's experience and I share that with a client. I say, hey, I know this person that had a similar situation and like they did this and that turned out really well for them. So maybe think about that, and I'm always supportive with whatever decision they make. Like I back them up and I'm like, you know what? If you feel like you need to go to Thanksgiving, I will be here and I will listen to how bad it was if you need to. Like I will also be that person. But, I'm coming from a very outside perspective, which can tend to help, which is why, therapy helps, it's an outside perspective. And so I feel like I never give black and white answers, but I do pull from my own experiences to help with that discernment.
I think that's interesting because there are some jobs like personal trainer, like hairstylist,
Mm-hmm.
where there's a tendency for people to open up and share,
Yeah.
what's going on? Okay, while we're doing this thing that's stationary, let's talk about our lives. And so people will often open up and share things, and it just seems natural.
Mm-hmm.
Weightlifting, right? Because if you're doing like weight resistance training, it's already kind of a, a, a hardship on your body, right? You're stressing your body out. So maybe you want to like talk
Get your
about stuff
stress
that
out.
was stressful, and like get that out too.
Yeah,
You
I
know,
always encourage that.
yeah, yeah. I think it's fascinating how some jobs lend themselves to that. But do you think it's also the person, like being open to talking about that? Because there are definitely trainers where I'll see people in the gym and like it's just like do this rep, do that, do that. Okay, good, push, push. And I don't necessarily see them sharing as much. What do you see about that situation? Like, what are your insights?
Yeah. Well, as a trainer, personally, I think that I create a very safe space for my clients compared to some trainers. Like, I try with everything in my power to not be on my phone during my sessions. Like, I typically try to put it to the side. Sure, I get like spam calls and I'm clicking them out, whatever, or I'm showing a client something on my phone, but I'm never texting other people while I'm with clients. I'm never like distracted by my phone. I know some trainers who will stand there and just scroll while their clients are doing, they're like one, two, three. But, like I've been saying, is I care about the well-being and quality of life of my clients. And that encompasses everything. And, you know, I hang out with my clients outside of the gym. Like it's not like I'm just there for the hour and that's all I care about. Like I care about, all the time. I check in on them. We go on double dates and like, I care about my clients. And I think that's a big difference is when a client feels genuinely like their trainer actually cares about what's happening, then that makes a difference. It's a different space then. It's not just like I'm paying this person to show me what to do, make sure my form's correct, whatever. But like it's different when the person who's training you actually genuinely cares about like you as a human, not as just like a body in the gym. Right. And I think that's where with my coaching too, with like doing the nutrition, the wellness, the habit stuff, like, you know, trainers who don't care about that stuff, like are probably not going to be the ones that care about your feelings for Thanksgiving, like going to your family. Like they're probably not the ones that are asking about that stuff. And I actually had a client one time that he said to me, he's like, you're just like a sponge. Like, how do you remember everything I tell you? And I'm like, because when someone cares and they're intentionally listening to you, they're going to remember. Because I would say to him, like, hey, how was your son's visit to this school or whatever? And he's like, you remembered that he did that. And it's like, yeah, because there's a very intentional caring there because I care about my clients. And I think what you're describing, where you're like, there's like no communication amongst, I think those trainers are, they care about the workout, but like, again, my idea of fitness and wellness, it encapsulates everything. If someone's struggling to feel happy in certain areas, they're not going to be able to also take care of themselves fully because they're focused on that thing too. So it's good to kind of address everything in that realm of wellness, well-being, like feeling good. All of that, goes together.
I do think that's the magic ingredient that for me in my experience really takes someone from being somebody who's just doing a job to something much more,
Mm-hmm.
where you can like see like huge differences in the outcomes that people get, and it's all just in that one word, caring. Let's talk about fitness. I want to
Okay.
talk about your own fitness
Yeah.
pursuits. Like you're an award-winning bikini bodybuilder, and I
We
want to know
won.
what drew you into the world of competing, and tell us about the awards you've won.
I fell into it. That's what I tell people. Is one of the other trainers at the gym was like, I'm going to do this bodybuilding show. And she was like, I'm trying to get other people to do it with me. Will you do it with me? And me, I've always done a sport. And I was doing obviously gymnastics, diving, and then I started doing Spartan races. And then COVID happened. So the Spartan races stopped. So I was kind of ready for my next big thing. And she just said, do you want to do it with me? And I was like, you know what? Sure. That's how it happened. I got a coach at first, and then closer to the end of my prep, he was like, you know what? I've never fully done a prep with a girl. I'm going to recommend that you start with his coach's coach, whose name is Enrique. And I've been with Enrique ever since. It's been like almost 2 years. I was telling him that. I was like, I think we've been together for like 2 years. Because it's a very similar relationship. I tell him everything when we train too, because he cares. Like he loves this. Like bodybuilding's his life. And we just had this conversation literally last week about how we don't dread our jobs. He's like, I love going to shows. I love coming back from a show. He flies all over to go to these shows. He comes back and he goes straight to team workouts on Sundays. Like he loves it. Like he lives and breathes bodybuilding. His dad and I sit down and talk. He's like, Enrique loves this stuff. And he knows I love this stuff. So we bonded. And, I did my first show. And honestly, I don't even count it as my first show because the physique was so far from what I am now. But yeah, it just was one of those things that kind of fell upon, and I loved it. And I love, my clients know this about me. I love discipline and regimen, and like I am such a regimented person. I thrive off of schedules. And bodybuilding is literally just like everything is lined up for you. You have a protocol. Your coach tells you, hey, I need you to eat this much food. I need you to exercise this much. I need you to take these vitamins. And I know I am that for other people, but I also love having that for me too. And I love having someone who can just, monitor everything and, see how my body's changing, see how I'm responding to things. I love that. And it's just something that like gives me happiness and energy and joy to do. And I love competing. I think it's so fun learning the posing, and you turn into a Barbie doll for the day, and it's so fun for me. But some people look at what I do and they're like, this looks awful. It's not for everyone. But yeah, that's how I came to it. It was on the fact that someone just said, "Hey, do you want to do this?" I got second at my shows in September and first at my show in October. That's what happened.
What dreams are you chasing now that you've already accomplished so much in this pretty short amount of time?
Mhm.
What dreams are you still chasing with this?
So the way it works is like you qualify for nationals, which I qualified for nationals at those two shows. But we're taking a whole year off to grow muscle tissue. I'm still not big enough for what I need to be. And then we're going to compete in a year. So we're going to take a full year. So next November we'll start a prep. So we'll do that whole prep where you lose weight and you shred down and get all nice and toned and sharp lines and stuff. And then we'll do a show and hopefully qualify for nationals. And then if you win a nationals, you become a pro. And then the goal as a pro is to be at the Olympia. And I know I've told you this. The goal one day is to be an Olympian, to compete on the Olympia stage. The girl who just won is the exact same height as me, so it's very like encouraging. And I've met her and she's amazing. And to hopefully, go to the Olympia one day, I tell my husband, I'm like, I just want to look like a racehorse. But
What
yeah,
does,
that's
what
that.
does that mean to look like a racehorse?
If you look at them, they're like, Efren told me, he's like, I feel like the way you guys prep is like, because he used to own racehorses. And he was like, I feel like it's so similar to like how we used to prep racehorses for their races because they're so lean and muscular and kind of shiny because they glaze you with like Pam oil spray before you go on stage. And you just everything like your skin looks tight to your muscle, everything's so defined, everything is perfectly proportioned, the proportions, you're super tan, you know and you look so muscular on stage. I love it. It's not for everyone, and I understand that.
So you mentioned you find joy in like the restricted diet, the thriving on a schedule. How do you maintain a positive mindset when most people struggle?
I think I see the bigger picture because it is totally a day in and day out grind. Like before we hopped on this call, for example, I'm like looking at my macros and I'm like, okay, I have this many grams of carbs. Okay, I'm going to have to eat this many grams of carbs before I go to the gym later. But I have a client after this and I'm like, okay, I need to have protein. How much protein do I need to have? Okay, how much fats have I already eaten for the day? And so I planned out my food and I'm like doing all this math in my head. And for some people, that is so taxing. But for me, I'm like, okay, but me staying on track right now means when I go into prep next November, it's going to be easier for me then. That's like the helping my future self concept. If I stay, they say tight in the off season, like if you really stay to your regimen in the off season, your prep should not be so difficult, which makes it more sustainable to do the sport longer. Right. So for me, I'm like every day that I stay on track and every day that I stick to my regimen, I'm getting better and better and I'm going to look better and better on stage and my prep's going to be easier and easier. It's still going to be hard. Don't get me wrong. It's still not going to be easy, but it's going to be easier to lose 15 pounds versus 30 pounds, right? So if I can just stick with it now, that's going to make that time period much more enjoyable and I get to enjoy the process rather than dreading it.
And so for people who, you meet and come across with and people who might be watching, what's your heartfelt take on like a shortcut to weight loss? Like, if somebody's considering like surgery or Ozempic.
I always tell people I meet them where they're at, right? And there are some people where the food and stuff, it is a big, big struggle. And I get that because, some people are not in that locked in mindset. I understand that. I understand that I can be considered like an anomaly in that. And I have a client who had, the gastric bypass surgery, but her doing that just completely shifted her nutrition. And now, she's down like 80 some pounds. But now she's super invested in nutrition because it kind of gave her that like, you have to be. If you don't eat correctly after a gastric bypass surgery, like you will get sick. And so through that, her and I talk about nutrition all the time. And she's like, oh, look at the grams on this and the grams of that. It kind of moved her into that. And so I've had experiences where people have done these shortcuts and it's been, I mean, overwhelmingly good results. I've had people who naturally we do it, naturally lose weight, don't have to do any of that and also get the same results. Now, I think my issue with it is when someone does it and doesn't have someone continually guiding them after they do it. So like with the weight loss drugs, with the surgeries that you can have, all that stuff, I think it's still good to have an accountability factor, someone to educate you because sure, you can take the weight loss drugs, but you're going to have to wean off of that and you're going to have to learn nutrition still because you can bounce back. You can bounce back after the surgeries. So if you don't take the time to educate, then it's going to be pointless regardless of which method you do. Whether you do something that maybe, yeah, it's like a shortcut, whether, it's basically like enhanced weight loss versus doing the natural way. If you are not educated on losing the weight and then maintaining the weight, both people on both sides of the spectrum can just gain the weight again. You've seen people lose significant amount of weight with no surgery, no extra help, but because they do severe calorie deficits, tons of cardio, but then no one helps them to maintain that and learn how to maintain that. So kind of, the word we keep going back to is educating. And I think in both ways, I don't mind coaching someone who's on weight loss drugs. I've done that. I don't mind coaching someone who's done the bypass surgery. That's whatever method worked for them, and that's fine. And I'm okay. There's no judgment there for me. People have goals that they want to get to, and I understand that they're going to find the means to do that. I care about keeping them healthy for a long time. So however they need to do that, I will help them. Like, I will help guide them. I never want to come from a place of judgment with that, because people tend to gain weight due to lack of knowledge, whether it's just they've always gained weight or whether they do some severe weight loss thing and then they gain it back. They just don't have the knowledge, and I can't judge people for that. Like, there's skills that I don't have that if I went in, try to build a house, a contractor can't judge me for not knowing how to do it. Like, it doesn't make sense. And so, yeah, so I think with that, people are going to do it how they're going to do it. And I just think, having guidance is always the key with those things.
Yeah, I think that really ties into the piece that you mentioned about having the trusted advisor or the coach or the person who's there to help you. So if they're going to get the surgery, or if they're going to take Ozempic or some sort of other way of that's outside of the gym, still having someone who can help them and give them that ongoing guidance that maybe they don't get through their primary physician, or through, just as a supplement, to what they're already getting
Mm-hmm.
from hospital or doctor.
Yeah.
So one thing you mentioned was, when your husband, like the original relationship when you guys met, was you were his trainer.
Yes.
Then at some point there was a change, and he went from seeing you as just his trainer to maybe a romantic interest as well. So he asked you out.
Mm-hmm.
Describe what you like. You mentioned that you need a little time to think it over, right? I think it's like 24 hours, right? You told him, give me 24 hours. Like, what did you consider those 24 hours, and then how did that play into your overall decision making process?
Yeah. Well, yeah. So we started out as trainer client. I think he started planting the seed pretty early on that he was like, we should, explore dating. I was like, my brain at work is training, clients, health, whatever. And he would always say to me, he's like, we should go get lunch sometime. And I always tell people too, I'm like, if I get hit on at the gym, I'm like, yeah, sure. It never happens. I'm like, but he actually, when my parents came to town, he offered to like fly them around, because he flies the recreational single engine planes and stuff like that. And so when we were up in the plane with my little brother, he was like on the radio, and he was like, Rachel, we should like go out to lunch this week, since you have 2 weeks. It was like my 2 week summer break from like my school and stuff. And he was like, we should like go get lunch or dinner or something. And I was like, it's like in front of my little brother. And I'm like, well, my little brother's like an adult though. He was like 23 or 24. I was like, yeah, sure. And then during that time period at the airport that we were at, my dad has MS. So he doesn't get around very easily, but Ephraim was so sweet with him. He like made sure he was safe, made sure he's, helping my dad getting out of the plane, just really answering all of his questions. And my dad was like so happy after this thing. And I was like, you know what? I really don't like, I was not in a place that I wanted to be in a relationship. I had just gotten out of a relationship. But I was like, man, he was so good with my dad. Like, my dad really, really liked him. And so I was like, you know what? I'll go. I'll get a free meal out of it. I was telling that. I was like, sure. But I was like, also too, I was like, I don't want to go on a date with someone, catch feelings, and then later on realize that there's qualities there that I don't like, because that's what happened in my previous relationship. There was things that I was like, these were all red flags from the get-go, and I kind of ignored them. So I went on our first date with a list of my requirements, and I read them to him. And I was like, this is what I expect out of my future partner. And I grilled him for the some hours that we were there. Like, grilled. Like, I was like, so what religion are you? Do you attend church? What are your expectations when having children? Like, all these things, like really like stuff you don't ask on a first date. So yeah, so we did that. And then we dated for like 2 weeks. And within a week, he was like, let's be exclusive. And I was like, okay, whatever. But then a week later, and I know I told you this, is he was like, will you be my girlfriend? I think we were at like Rubio's or something, like sitting there. And I looked at him, I was like, can I just have a day to think about this? And he was like, sure, not something everyone wants to hear, right? But in that day, I was like, you know what? Like, does he really encompass the qualities that I want in a partner right now? Because I was ready to just focus on business, do my own thing, focus on school. I was in my master's degree, and he's older than me. We have an age gap. I knew he was looking for a marriage. And I was like, do I have the capacity to date someone who has the intention of marriage? I was dating guys my age who weren't sure that they were ready for marriage. And then I was going to be in a relationship with someone who was for sure knowing he wanted to be married. And that was a big decision for me because I knew if I got into this relationship, this was probably going to be the last relationship I was in. And part of me I was 26, 27, I was like, am I ready to give up the rest of my 20s to be married to someone right now? In California, it's common for women, to not get married till their 30s. And that was a big decision for me because I have goals and I wanted to focus on those goals. And adding a partner into that mix was going to create a little bit of a boundary with that, a little bit of an obstacle. So, but I thought to myself, this guy encompasses everything I've asked for in a human being. And he's right here. So am I going to give that up? And one day my future self is going to be like, dang, was that the one that got away? Is that future self concept? And within that 24 hours, I was like, you know what? My future self is going to appreciate me taking a chance on this. And my goals will come as they come. I know how to commit to things. I know how to manage my time. It'll happen. And here we are. We're married. That was like a long version. Yeah, thank you.
So yeah, so I love that insight that you had given yourself, like as the current self, you gave your future self a lot of credit, right? A lot of value by saying, hey, here's my list of requirements on that first date. And you found out that he was a match in terms of like something that you'd spent time to consider like ahead of time. This is what I'm looking for in a partner. It's literally a checklist.
Literally. It was written out on paper. Yeah.
And what, like I think some people with their checklist, I have heard of this being sort of a hot topic because some people might have the wrong things on their checklist. So, or maybe too many things or not the right things. What was on the checklist and what should people like look for in a checklist like that? What would be your guidelines for somebody trying to figure out that checklist for themselves?
Yeah. So, I mean, there were things on there because of my age that I was like, I can't do this anymore. I was dating guys who didn't have jobs, first of all. That was like my own red flag for myself. I was like, why is that occurring? But I needed people who were meeting where I was at. Like I was from the age of 23 to whenever that was, living by myself in California, making it work, like working whatever I needed to do. And I was like, there is no reason that my partner can't be doing that. Because I mean, for me, I was like, that means that they have the same ambition that I do. So I needed that. Another thing that was really, really key for me was that I did not want my partner to look down on me because I did have a partner who was putting himself so high above me that like I felt like my opinion didn't matter. And I knew going into a relationship with an older guy who had so much more experience and I mean, Efren has a crazy successful history, right? And I was like, am I going to, be able to have an equal relationship with someone that's this much older than me and with this much experience? And he's proven time and time again that like he does not look down on me. He's always respected my opinion. Even when we first started dating, he was proposed this like idea to invest in this company. And before he ever made any decisions about it, he brought it to me and he said, I would love to know what you think about this. And we discussed it. And I showed him exactly why I thought he shouldn't. And then he was like, no, this makes sense. Like, you're right. You actually knew more about this than I would. And so he's never been that way where he ever spoke down to me and thought like, she doesn't know what she's talking about because she's too young to know. He's never been like, you just wouldn't understand because you're young. That's never been an aspect of our relationship, which was for me in a relationship with someone who had less knowledge than he does. So that's important in a personality type. You don't want someone who's overly prideful who can't put that aside and be like, can you just give me your true opinion and I will listen to it and I will take it in and I'll, marinate in that opinion so I can make an informed decision. And so that was a key thing. What else was on that list? I think they had to be funny. I think that was one of them. And they have to also be able to like banter a little bit with me. I am a tough cookie. And sometimes I know like I'm very honest. And I also like when people are honest with me. And I need that dynamic because, for example, with the bodybuilding, I have to look a certain way. If I don't look a certain way, I'm not going to win, right? I don't want a partner who's always going to be like, no, you look great if I'm talking in regards to bodybuilding. And Ephraim doesn't do that. He'll be like, yeah, your shoulders look great, but like your hamstrings are not where they need to be for you to win. So we needed that honest conversation as well. So there's like things like that where it has to meet you with your goals because I didn't want a partner that was going to also not want me to work towards my goals. I needed them to be ambitious. I needed them to have their own ambitions, you know? And he is exactly like that. We both have our ambitions. You know, he has his hobby of flying, and that's something that takes his time. I have my bodybuilding stuff. Oh, and they also had to have friends. I needed my partner to have friends. That's important. That other people also like them, which I don't think is crazy to put that on your list. Most people should have friends.
That's a great checklist. So the same ambition, they support your ambitions,
Mhm.
equal partners. They're
Yeah.
not going to look down on you. Even if they're more experienced in something, they still don't look down on you. They're got enough humility and not overly prideful to listen to your opinion and actually like
Mhm.
really take it in.
Mhm.
He's got a sense of humor, right? You could joke around, honest, you know, and he'll even be honest in terms of supporting your interests when you're saying, hey, I really need you to be honest in this way, you know, which is not typical. Most women, if they say, how do I look? The answer is always, you
Great.
look great.
You look great.
But in terms of your bodybuilding, you needed a very specific, you know, critique, you know, and he's willing to do that and work with you on that. And he's also got, you know, friends who like him as well. I think that's a wonderful checklist, and it's very sensible.
Mhm.
You know, people could have something on their checklist like, you know, what are do they wear the right shoes? You know, like that could be like their checklist.
Yeah. That's someone not looking for a partner.
Yeah, yeah. So there must have been pushback from what you described, right? It's an age gap relationship. Like his friends and family, maybe your friends and family, some people must have had strong opinions about a 15-year age gap. So like
Mhm.
how did you handle that? How were you able to like set your boundaries and keep things right with him, but also handling the pushback
Yeah.
that must have come from others?
Well, from my side, none of my friends have been anything but supportive, honestly. They all love him. And before him and I ever went on a date, I spoke with my parents. I was like, hey, is the age gap going to be an issue? Because if it is, I just won't go out with him. I wasn't attached to him. You know, that's helping my future self that I was not going to go out with this guy that they were going to hate because of that. Because that's something that's not changeable. Like, I can't change the age gap. I can't make them love that, you know. But they were like, no, he's great. Go out with him. So I never had any issues on my side. And honestly, his family has been great. They love me. They have a ton of age gap relationships within their own family. So for them, it wasn't an issue. He did have a few friends who were like pretty opinionated about that because one of his friends is a little bit older than he is. So her children are closer to my age. And that really rubbed her the wrong way. But, you know, him and I had a lot of communication about that stuff. And I said to him, I've always been a very clear communicator in this relationship. And I said to him, and I said, look, if you want to have people in your life that are like very much, you know, publicly upset about our relationship, and I was like, if you feel like, you know, they're adding value to you, then like you need to have discussions with them and stuff like that. But honestly, like that can't be someone that we're going to have around. And if you're like, look, they are a non-negotiable for me, then that's where I'm like, but I can't have that for me. So like I would have to step away from the relationship because, you know, and I'm not saying like, you know, some people might say that's like an ultimatum and stuff, but it was like, you know what? Like, if this is going to be a long term relationship and you're going to always have someone who's in your ear saying you should not be in this relationship, it's not going to be a successful relationship. It's going to lead to issues. And like, this was someone where I felt like her opinion was from a weird place, I guess. And I was like, you know what? She didn't take any time to get to know me. She didn't even ask you about me. Like there was no effort to even understand why he would be dating someone like me. And that's where too, she didn't trust his judgment, on that. And so that was someone that we kind of had to cut out. It's like, you know, I'm mature for my age, and him and I bring value to each other's life. And she was just taking away value. She wasn't providing any value for, her friendship. And I know you and I've discussed this, is like when you have friends in your life, are they feeding your life, or are they pulling from it? That's kind of where I was like, well, and I asked him this. I said, look, is she someone that you absolutely feel like is giving value to your life that you really need to keep in your life? If so, then let's sit down with her. Let's talk with her. She needs to get to know me. We did talk about doing something like that because they'd been friends for so long. But he was like, no, he was like, I want my friends to trust my judgment. Like, he's like, I'm old enough at this point that like they should know me well enough to know I'm not just gonna like date someone and, ruin my whole life. Like they know he has that discernment when it comes to that kind of thing. So that was kind of the decision we had to make, that pushback. But it was all just like communicating. I don't feel like him or I either got irrational when it came to those things. Like, yes, it was annoying because I'm like, I'm like, she's older than me and she acts so much younger than me, And so, I mean, at that point I was like, it's your decision. I'm not forcing you into either decision. I'm trusting you to make that decision. So,
I like that I like that you trust your own decisions, and then you're able to give that same trust to him
mhm,
in the decisions that he's making. And, of course, we always watch what decisions people make so that we can be informed for, what's to come.
mhm,
He made the supportive decision to support your relationship. He saw, like, she didn't put the effort. She didn't try to understand you guys as a couple, and why you guys made sense,
mhm,
for the long term. And she wasn't being trusting of his judgment.
mhm.
Uh, you know, it was a decision you made together. You cut her out. That's the word decision. Goodbye to one thing and hello to something else. Now you're married, happily ever after.
Happily ever after.
Congrats.
Thank
That's
you.
awesome. What surprised you the most about sharing your life with someone 15 years older?
Well, it doesn't ever feel like he's really 15 years older. To be honest with you, I think we do, like, mentally age wise, match up pretty well. And, you know, I'm not going to say it's always easy, but it feels easier than I think some people say that it would. Like, we have our little, tiffs here and there, but I am a very open communicator, and I've been this way since I was however long I can remember. And he is a very calm person. So when I communicate with him that, hey, I'm feeling this way, he typically does not get defensive. Like 98% of the time will not get defensive. And so it's a lot easier than I thought. Now, given we have some like generational things where we're like he's like, "You've never seen Back to the Future?" And I'm like, "No, you've never seen Hannah Montana?" Like I'll make little like I'll say something like, "You get the best of both worlds, huh?" But he doesn't understand that I'm referencing Hannah Montana's theme song. Like we do have like those things. Like, we don't share the same music. We don't share all the same like movies that we used to. Like there's like those sort of things, like those generational things. But I think when it comes to like emotional maturity, life stuff, like I am pursuing my ambitions. Like I am not I think it'd be different if I was like a 28-year-old who was like partying every weekend and drinking and all this stuff, but I'm not that way. Like, my non-negotiable is going to the gym. I don't drink alcohol. Like it's a lot different. He's the one that's like, we should go out sometimes. So we don't have that like difference in our ages like that. Like we're both okay doing pretty similar things. So I haven't noticed it. I don't notice our age gap that frequently, except for the entertainment portion, like the movies, music, shows, things like that. Things that I'm like, oh, that's an old TV show. And he's like, that's what I grew up watching, like things. But otherwise, yeah, it feels like any other relationship. Oh, he sucks at texting though. Sucks at it. My friends think it's so funny though. Like my friend sent him such a heartfelt long birthday text, and he just texted back, "Cool, Thanks. She was like, she sent me a screenshot of it, and I was like, and I told her too. I was like, you know what's so funny is if I wasn't married to him, the way he texts me, I would think he's not interested. I'll send him a text. I'm like, oh my gosh, I had such a good lift. I feel so good. Like everything, send him a long text and he'll just text me back, cool. And that's it. That's all I got. Or nice. Yeah.
So we got into the space of the next F, right? Which is fun. So you mentioned, like your definition of fun is not to party every weekend, but you like consistency in your schedule, going to the gym. And he's more the one who wants to go out and stuff. But what's your tell me more about your definition of fun.
I'm a homebody. So I think this is the reason my friend Justine and I are such good friends is we are both very simple and we don't need to go out to do a lot to have fun. Like her and I can just meet up, we'll eat and we'll sit at the kitchen table for 3 hours and hang out. But I like to do like activities. Like I don't like to go to loud bars and like, I don't do the party scene. I don't do like those big festival scenes. Like I am the person that is like, let's go grab food together, or let's go do an escape room together, or let's go mini golfing. Like things like that are fun because I really enjoy quality time. And I tend to like to have quality friends. And, I think that's where Ephraim and I connected so well is I remember like one night we sat on my couch for like 4 hours talking when we first started dating. And I was like, okay, like this is fun for me. I enjoy quality time. Maybe that's why I love being a trainer so much too, is like I feel like I'm spending quality time with people. I'm getting to know them. That's what fuels me. I don't like to be in big groups. I like to, I'll go bowling or something or go to the arcade, like things like that. I do like that. But I don't like these big groups. I like having that like one-on-one setting where I get to know people and create those quality good relationships. We got married in Tulum and I had my group of girls that I'm friends with come to Tulum with me. And my sister said to me, she's like, you have such high quality of friends. She was like, I love all of your friends. And that was big because she hadn't met a majority of them, but she was like, wow, like you're able to find really good quality of friends. Like that must mean you're a good quality friend, right? And so that's fun for me, is having people that like I just enjoy talking to. Because at the end of the day, anyone can party with you. Anyone can go do these like wild activities with you. But the ones that can sit at your kitchen table for 3 hours, those are your quality people that are going to be around for a very long time. And so that's what I enjoy. That's fun for me. And also weightlifting. I'll always
So
be down.
what was your like most recent time, the last time that you just like felt like over the moon? Like this was the best time ever. I could not have asked for more fun.
I feel like in regards to like with my friends and stuff is and this is not everyone's idea of fun, but like my friend Justine and I, we went and got food together. We hung out, we talked, we sat at her kitchen table, 3 hours, sat and talked. And I remember coming home to Ephraim, and I was like, I needed that. Like I needed to hang out with my friend who knows me so well, who just gets me, and just sit there and talk with her. Like that's what I needed. Like that for me was the most so fulfilling, like, and I appreciate the very simple things. And maybe it's because I grew up in the Midwest. Maybe it's because I grew up where we didn't like that's pretty much what we did. We would hang out at each other's houses, maybe play pool or something, but like otherwise we'd just sit and talk. And so that's what I find to be fun, is just being with my people. Like that simple, like just being around people who get you. That's fun for me because I know not everyone can relate or have those deep conversations with like you can't have those with everyone, but she's someone who like, you know, we just get each other. So that's fun for me.
Yeah, it's really cool. And I think I like how you mentioned that it not only is it like fun to connect with someone in that way and have that deep quality conversation, but also like that it it enriches your life and it gives you that restorative
Hmm.
feeling.
Yeah.
Like because you're going a lot in your life. Like you're working out, you're completing goals. Like, okay, I got my degree. Okay, yeah, and now I'm gonna do this, my next competition and stuff. So everybody needs that restorative time. And that's what I'm hearing from you is that those quiet times when you can just hang out with your close friend and then talk for hours and hours like that gives you that restorative feeling
Hmm.
so that you can go out and, and kick butt again the next day.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what I enjoy.
It's really neat. Okay. Ready for the lightning round?
Yes.
Okay. Here we are at the lightning round.
Is this like the last round? Is that why it's the lightning round?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's just how everything kind of has been more like blue sky, like let's really explore, and find out what the answer is going to be. Like this is more like targeted. Like, so what's been in your whole life? What's been your best investment for financial health?
For financial health, my best investment? Probably getting my personal training certification. That's pretty much led me to everything else.
And so just walk me through a little bit about what that looked like, getting it, and then all the things that it led to.
It was actually really easy to get because my undergrad in biology, the hardest part on the test is anatomy, but I took a high level college anatomy class, so passed it pretty easily. I only studied for like probably a few weeks. And then, got a job at Gold's Gym, did group fitness classes, and that just continued on and on, kept building my knowledge, and eventually got to Equinox and worked there for some years. And now I'm, met my current boss there, who now I work for here. And so it kind of just kept layering on and layering on, but you can't be a personal trainer without a certification in personal training. So I feel like that has to be like the key thing that I needed.
And what has been your best investment for your personal fitness?
My best investment, paying my coach Enrique to guide my entire life. I trust that man with everything.
So what does that look like? How does he help you? What happens when you guys get together?
We go through my nutrition, my plan, my supplements that I'm taking, how I'm looking, if I need more rest, if my body's feeling off, like basically he guides everything. If I'm also like in my head about stuff, he's very good at just talking me out of it and just being that voice of reason.
What does that mean if you're in your head?
If I'm like, I feel like especially in prep, I'm like, I feel like I'm not as tight as I should be. Like I'm not as lean as I should be. He's like, dude, you're fine. You're like, you're good. I promise. If you weren't, I would tell you. Because I do trust him. I trust that he is doing the process correctly, which is why on show day, I'm so relaxed. I slept 9 hours before every single one of my shows this year because I trust that the hay is already in the barn, as we say. All I've done, I could do, and I did it, and I did it according to what he wanted. And so I trust my coach that he made the correct decisions for me. Just like my clients, I expect to trust my decisions for them.
And what's been your best investment for family?
Marrying Ephraim.
And then so what's that investment look like to people who haven't taken that step yet in their lives? Like what does that look like to make that happen?
I was not the person that wanted to be married, but because I didn't want a partner that was going to pull me from my ambitions and like not push me to be better. And, fine. I said this in my vows. I was like, I'm never going to find a person who loves me more than Ephraim loves me. He loves me through all my ambitions, through all of my crazy goals that I have. He listens to me. He educates himself on the things that I want to pursue. And like, when you have a partner who is actually your partner, who wants everything the best for you and helps you make those decisions, then like you become better and better and better. And so we push each other to be better and not try to pull from each other. Like he flew to El Salvador this weekend because he wanted to. And I could have been like, it's a holiday weekend. You're not allowed to. You have to stay home. But because, there's times where I need him to also be supportive of me going and doing stuff. So we have that relationship where we do push each other and we want each other to thrive in the things that we do. They don't have to be the same things. He doesn't want to bodybuild. I don't want to fly, but we can push each other in those areas still in the ways that we can. So,
And what's been your best investment for fun?
Investing in the right friends, the friends that I've invested my time in, being wise about that and learning that it is okay to not be friends with everyone and just invest quality time with the people that are willing to invest back in you. So, whether that's taking the time to drive to people and carving out time in your busy schedule for them, like investing in the right friends has been key for me to learn that I'm not.
So what if somebody doesn't understand that for themselves? Like how can you help them to really see like this friend is the right friend to invest in? This friend is not. What if they come to you and they're asking this question? How could you help them?
So I feel like in my head, there's a Kelsey Ballerini song that says, does it feed my soul or my anxiety? That's like the line in the song. And I always kind of think that way. I'm like, are they feeding me? Is this like a symbiotic relationship where we're both, or is it like mutual? Like where we're both feeding each other, we're both making each other better, we're both, bringing each other up, we're both caring for each other the same way? Or is it one person caring a lot and the other person's just like sucking that out of them? And so that's like, does it feed your soul or does it feed your anxiety? Like, is this relationship causing you more pain than good? Like having that filter. I read a book about that actually, where they were saying like you have to filter your friends. Who are the ones that are supportive of you in whatever aspect that is? I think it was actually a financial book, and they were saying, are your friends supportive of the fact that you need to save money, and instead of taking you to expensive restaurants or understanding that you're going to get something small because that's all you can pay for, are they going to be supportive of that? Or are they going to say, oh, well, I can still afford this place, so let's go here anyway, even though it's going to cause you stress? And I've started kind of having that mindset around my friends is like, are they okay that, you know what, maybe we're just going to cook at home because I'm in prep? Are they okay with that? Or, you know, those people that are like, I take the effort to, go to them or like find activities that accommodate them in a certain way, finding that filter for your friends. That's okay. It's okay to filter your friends.
And who should I interview next?
You should interview my bosses, Alec and Jess, because they are entrepreneurs. They've created the space where I work and I love working there. So, and they're wonderful people. They're from the Midwest as well. So you should hit them up.
Okay, I'll talk to them while we're all at the gym together.
Yeah, you could do a little duet podcast with both of them. That'd be kind of cute. A little husband wife duo.
Done that yet?
Yeah, that would be kind of fun. Maybe you could do
That's
that. Yeah.
If you were my podcast business coach, how would you help me to grow my podcast, knowing that my goal is to be the biggest podcaster in the world, and I want to help entrepreneurs know they can have financial success without sacrificing the rest of their lives, their fitness, their family, and their fun?
How would I advise you? I do feel like I did already by now having you on other platforms so I can listen to you on the way to work. I think that was great for the podcast, is putting yourself on as many platforms as possible to reach as many people as possible. Kind of like how I'm doing with my fitness stuff. Same thing.
Yeah, no, that was a great suggestion, which it only took me a long time to implement. It was always a great suggestion,
Yeah.
and I finally did
And you
implement
did
it.
it.
I'm
Yeah.
happier that I did.
Good.
What's my next step, coach?
I guess continuing to get guests that are also in the podcast world as well. Continuing to do that because they're people who are going to also have podcast listeners, right? So you'll reach wider audiences every time, because like I have social media and I have people who used to listen to my podcast, right? So then if I post it, hopefully more people will start to, listen. Finding people who have already good connections, that helps.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, after this is done, whenever, it takes time to do that, but I'll send you all the links, and then like we can both broadcast it to our socials.
Yes, awesome.
Thank you, Rachel, so
Yeah.
much. This has been amazing. I've really loved having you join, and I think everybody is going to be inspired and going to learn a lot from hearing about your experiences and all the learnings that you've shared and all your fun adventures in your life and all the wonderful things that you're doing to help others.
Good. I hope so. I hope so. Thank you for having me.
And where can people find you? So people are watching this and they're like, I want to work with Rachel. How can they reach out to you?
Instagram, and my handle is at RachelJ_fitness. I never changed my initial on there because I wasn't sure I wanted to change my Instagram name yet with my new name. So
at Rachel J
_fitness.
_fitness. Awesome.
Yes.
Thanks again, Rachel.
Yes. Thank you.